So, are you struggling with doing your first syndication deal? If so, let me ask you this. What's your biggest challenge, you think? I find that most people, the reason they're challenged with anything they're doing, finding deals, raising capital, thinking big, is because they feel like they need to go at it alone. They're the lone wolf of multifamily investing. The truth of the matter is that the people who are successful faster, who do bigger deals faster, they never do it alone. They have a team around them. They have professionals around them, but they also may have partners around them. And that is literally the key to accelerating everything. So if you're struggling with finding deals or raising capitals, look yourself in the mirror and see if that may be the root cause is that you're trying to go it out alone. So in this episode, we're going to drill down deep on how to accelerate the speed and the size of your deals by joint venturing. Hey, let's do this. So with me on the show today is Brian Briscoe, co-founder of Four Oaks Capital. And what I love about these guys is Brian kind of came into our program and networked with people in our Dealmaker Mastermind, other mentoring students, and together they created this company called Four Oaks Capital. So 11 months after they joined our program, they closed on their first deal, which was a 55-unit in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And what was fascinating about that is it was a real nail biter to get it done, for reasons that Brian's going to talk about in the show. And what's also interesting is the law of the first deal kicked in, and they were actually under contract before they closed that first one, and they're under contract for the third deal. So it is incredible what these four have done in unbelievable short time frame. And Brian's going to talk about that because in his mind, literally within 14 months, his mind shifted from, hey, I'm going to do a six unit deal to, hey, I'm going to do 500 units in 2020. And what precipitated that mindset? How did he achieve that in such a poor period of time? So that's what we're going to talk about on the podcast today. We're going to talk about how he networked to find his current partners, how they structured their company and defined the roles, because that's always a challenge with partnerships, how they found that first deal, and how the broker took them seriously, what they did, and how they closed that deal because it wasn't looking good there at the very end. How they were able to raise money, and how the law of the first deal kicked in, and also how their plan is for scaling their portfolio, because now that's their next challenge is how do I scale all that? So let's get right in the show here with Brian Briscoe. Hey, Brian, welcome to the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate being on the show.
Well, this is great. It's just been really exciting to watch you evolve. When we met like a year ago or so at one of our events, and you're like, well, I'm about to get deployed and I'm going to do my first deal while I'm deployed. And I was like, well, sure you are. Good job, And my gosh, you've come a long way in the last 12 months. And we want to drill down on your first deal. Obviously, this is kind of a first deal highlight. But before we get to that, I kind of just want to rewind the clock a little bit on what prompted you to even think about real estate or multifamily to begin with?
My dad always said that, I had champagne taste on a beer budget when I was growing up, so at some point in my mind, I always wanted to succeed, to have, enough money to be able to do stuff. And, I say, 20 or 30 years ago, I just did a simple math program. The average starting salary for a college graduate is $50,000. Okay. 50,000, 1 million divided by 50,000. Oh my gosh, 20 years to be a millionaire. That's not going to work. So end of the day, I just, so when I was in my mid 20s, I just started reading a lot of books, and I know it's cliche, but I found this little purple book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And, that's something that really turned me on to passive income streams and real estate. So, the year I bought that book, I said, I'm going to buy a single family house every year. Next year was 2007, before the crash. I bought a house, and fortunately, it cash flowed through the crash. The year after that, the market had crashed. I bought another one, and I had planned to keep on doing it, but once again, active duty military, a couple of deployments got in the way, and then I called a couple of banks, and lending was tight, and nobody would give me money. And at the time, I didn't understand the creativity, portion of it. I didn't understand anything else. I just thought, well, banks aren't going to give me money to buy another investment property. I guess I'll just stick with a couple and figure it out later. So, fast forward, several years later, this would have been 2 years ago. I'm sitting on a ship, another deployment, somewhere in, the Middle East, and had a lot of time on my hands. And I started reading a whole bunch of other books on real estate. And I was still focused on single family, and I remember picking up the book by Keller, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. And that one just blew my mind. But, I started spreadsheeting. And, I got 2 degrees in math. So spreadsheets, I can do spreadsheets. But I started spreadsheeting. And I figured, okay, if I go back to my 1 house per year goal, how long is it going to take me to be financially free? And the answer was way too long. I don't remember what it was in years. So I cranked it up. Okay, 2 per year. It was still way too long. I'm like, okay, I got to figure out a different plan. And I picked up a book on multifamily. I don't even remember which book it was, but I mean, it was like the light bulb went on. And so the next time we had a port call and I had Wi-Fi, I downloaded every multifamily book that I could. I got home from the deployment, and one of the multifamily books mentioned, 3 or 4 podcasts that I should listen to. One of them was yours. I think Rod Cleese was in there, but it had Joe Fairless was the other one. Those were the 3 multifamily podcasts that book recommended. And so the podcast ended up being my commute, my gym time. Every free second I had my earphones in and I was listening to podcasts. I knew I was living in San Diego. I knew I was going to move within a year at this time. And so I just kind of put things on hold, and I said, as soon as I move, we'll launch it. And I found out I was going to work at the Pentagon, Northern Virginia. And I remember, I'm sitting at my in-laws' house and I'm listening to one of your podcasts, and it says, you happen to mention that you were in Northern Virginia. And I'm like, that's right. He is in Northern Virginia. So I signed up for your online course that day. It was just like, well, if he's in Northern Virginia, I'm going to sign up for his course, and, at least we'll be close. So that was kind of the start. I was always interested in it. It just took me a long time to get to go. And, August last year, I moved to where I'm at right now. And, that's really where the multifamily journey started. From there, it was just, it can kind of seem overwhelming, all the things you have to put together. I remember a lot of times in the process just saying, okay, what's the next thing I need to do? When you lay out everything you need to do to purchase a multifamily investment, it's a lot. And so, I remember going to work with a to-do list of call 5 property managers or call 5 brokers or whatever, and stepping out at lunch and making the call. But, end of the day, I attended your Dealmaker Live, and that completely opened my mind. Before Dealmaker Live, I was thinking that I had to do my first one by myself. I had this limiting belief that nobody was going to invest with me if I hadn't had a success story of my own. If I hadn't had one that I could show, hey, look, I've done this successfully. So I was looking at 6-unit properties, 8-unit properties, and the Dealmaker Live. I remember talking with a couple of people there, and just realizing that I could go a lot bigger and a lot faster if I had the right help. So I started researching, ways I could get help. Somebody I met at your Dealmaker Live said, hey, you can partner with us, and that was a very appealing thought. But at the same time, I was researching, your coaching program. And in my mind, I was just like, okay, number one, I know that I would have a hard time doing this myself. So if I had help, whether it be from, the guy I met who also lives in the DC area, or through coaching, I could accelerate everything. So decided to do coaching, and, through the forum, through the Dealmaker Mastermind forum, I met my partners that I currently have. So there's 4 of us now. Eric Shirley was the first one I met, and Eric introduced me to Todd Butler, whom he met in the Dealmaker Mastermind forum. and then to his friend Brian Mallon. So within a couple of months, we were under contract on our first deal. It was a two different apartment complexes sold together, a 16 unit and a 39 unit. We closed on that one in October. And just last week, we closed on our second deal, so, another 33 units, added on there. And right now we're under contract for 80 more.
Good grief.
That we should close on February, March timeframe. So end of the day, it's a kind of a testament to, number one, putting your mind towards something. I made the goal at Dealmaker Live in November last year that I would close on 2 apartments in 2019. I closed on 2 deals, 3 apartments. So, checking that box. But, and the other thing was, absolutely, I needed a support network. It doesn't matter where you go for your support network. You need to be around like-minded people to be able to help you get across the finish line.
Yeah, I think a lot of people approach it and think it's a lone sport. And in fact, it is, because no one around you does this kind of stuff. So if you talk to your friends, family, neighbors, even your local real estate association meeting, they're all going to think you're kind of crazy because there's so few people doing that. And you're like, wow, I am maybe a little crazy. And maybe your wife even thinks you're crazy. And then you go to events like Dealmaker Live or other events, you're like, oh my gosh, there's a whole bunch of crazy people in the room. And you realize that you're not as crazy as you think. And this is frankly one of those great benefits of bringing your spouse, to these events. They're like, oh my gosh, my husband's not as crazy, as I thought he was. And I think the theme, this was the first Dealmaker Live we did in 2018, was around joint venturing, partnering as a way to accelerate. And that first deal that you did, you didn't find that, right? It was Eric's or Todd's deal, right?
No, that one I found.
Oh, you did find. I think you said someone else uploaded the same deal to to Slack.
Oh yeah. That was how Eric and I met. Eric and I were both working on the same deal. It was a 104 unit in Columbia, South Carolina. We were both underwriting it. And he uploaded it to Slack and I saw it. So we ended up putting an offer in together on that one, but we didn't get it. But the same brokerage floated me the property in Spartanburg that we ended up closing on, and for some reason they showed that to me, but they didn't show it to Eric. So I had first bite on that one, and I took point on that one. So it was.
So let's unpack this a little bit. A few things that we're glossing over a bunch of stuff. First of all, for those guys watching, listening, if you're listening to this on podcast, hop over to YouTube, because you can have comments and discussions here. So if you have questions as you're watching this, just put it in there, and we're gonna monitor that as well. If you're on YouTube and you want to listen to us on the go, then check it out on iTunes via podcast. But Brian's mentioning a couple of things like Slack and Dealmaker Mastermind. Dealmaker Mastermind is an online forum program, and it's extremely affordable. It's like $49 a month, and it allows you to connect with other investors. It allows you to upload your analysis using the syndicated deal analyzer, and then also gives you access to our deal desk, where you can submit deals for partnering with us and some other lead sponsors. So that's what he's talking about here. So Eric was a Dealmaker Mastermind.
Yep.
And then he introduced you to Todd Butler, who was also another mentoring student of ours. Yep. And then he introduced you to a friend of his. There's 4 of you guys.
There's 4 of us, correct.
And so let's look at the timeline here, really, because you really, from the time you started the program with us and you closed your deal, how many months went by, roughly? 11, 12?
10 months.
10 months. Okay.
Until we closed the deal. So 10 months. And we had a snag at the end, and we had to buy an extra extension. But
we'll get into that. Months. Well, 10 months should have been 10 months. And then the second one, how much time went by between when you got the second one under contract after you closed the first one? How much time went by there?
We had it under contract before we closed.
Aha.
Yes.
Okay.
So we actually had 2 under contract before we closed. We ended up dropping 1. But right before we closed, we had due diligence on 2 properties while we were trying to close. So ended up being a fun couple of weeks.
And we're going to get into it. Let's not get ahead. We're going to get into it. This is going to be great. Right. So you mentioned, I'm going to go back to what you said. You and Eric had 104 you were pursuing together, and that same broker then brought you the deal you ended up closing on. Why do you think that broker brought you that first deal after you obviously failed to close on that first one, or didn't pursue it, or didn't work out? Why do you think that? What was behind that?
I drove down there. So I live in
Ah,
DC. This is in South Carolina, and
that's a haul.
sometime it's about a 7 hour drive.
Yeah.
My wife's got family down there, so I visited some of family members too. But I decided, I need to do something. I can't just sit at my computer. I need to do something. So I picked a week, took it off of work, and just started planning the trip. The same brokerage had another one that they wanted that we were underwriting. And, a couple of days, it was probably the Friday before I went down, I got an email from the broker who said, hey, we just got an owner to agree to list this property with us. It's about 2 miles from the property you're looking at. Do you want to look at it too? And I was like, you know what, if I'm going to be down there, I might as well, And so basically what happened is I looked at it, but we were so hyper-focused on the other one. We had put so much work and effort into the other one that, my mindset was, okay, let's look at this other one, take this through to completion. We put an offer in on that one, and we didn't get, there's 2 offers in, and the other guy, went under contract with it. And so I reached back to the broker and I said, hey, it's been 3 weeks since I looked at that other property. Is it still available? And fortunately for us, and this was, very fortuitous, is, the broker said, the owner told us to pump the brakes and not to show it to very many people. He may be having second thoughts. I don't understand, but we've kind of stopped marketing it. And so I said, so is it available? And she says, put an offer in and we'll see. I'm like, okay, that's awesome. So there, competition, there was almost no competition on this one. So we worked up an offer, and a couple of days later put the offer in, and we batted the offer back and forth, and ended up getting it under contract. So, why did they show that one to us? We were persistent. I was definitely talking to them a lot. Eric was talking to them a lot. They knew that we were working together, and, I drove down there. I walked a property with them, walked 2 properties with them. And that was, I think that's kind of it.
I think that my observation is normally we teach, hey, don't drive to the property until you have it under contract, which is all fine and good because most of us are buying property far away from us. So, we don't want to waste time and money. However, I have observed repeatedly, and you're an example of that you can really accelerate the relationship building by actually going down there in person before you have it under contract. Yeah. This is an example of that, right? So you're down there, you build a relationship over the phone, and they're like, hey, let's tour this thing. And in so doing, you really set yourself apart from the vast majority of these brokers, buyers on that list. And, they want to be efficient / lazy, right? Like all of us. And they're like, well, gosh, if I don't have to create a bunch of marketing material, put in a website and email my buyers list and show this thing for the next 4 to 8 weeks, that would be good for me. So this is the magic of these off-market or semi-off-market deals, because they're like, well, gosh, there's a certain strike price that the seller wants. And the listing agent knows this, of course. And they're like, man, hey, Brian, if you come in around this ballpark, you can have the deal and I don't have to do any work for it. And I still get paid.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's the magic of this off-market deals that you've done. You really accelerated that. Now, when you approached this broker before this even happened, why do you think this broker was taking you seriously, right? Because you're not going to call up and say, hey, Brian, my name is Brian. I own 10,000 units, right? You didn't have that. Why do you think that this broker took you seriously enough to invite you down there?
I got a referral to that brokerage, actually. I had very little luck, cold calling. I mean, every once in a while, brokers would give you the time of day. I've had brokers literally tell me, I don't want to waste my time with you. I mean, one of them said, I get 100 calls from guys like you every week. So I'll put you on my email list. That's it. I'm not going to meet with you. I'm not going to spend more than a couple minutes on the phone unless you've got, an offer in hand, type stuff. So this particular one, I was working with another broker who we had built a little bit of a rapport, but they didn't focus on multifamily. They did a couple of multifamily deals, but didn't focus on multifamily. And one day she told me, she's like, hey, I don't think we can do what you want us to do. We don't do multifamily very much. So I got a friend from college who's a broker in South Carolina. Do you mind if I make the introduction? So, really I think it was the introduction that really helped, because, when you're cold calling people, you got like a couple of seconds to catch their attention. And, if you don't say the right things or do the right things or show your ability to close, they're just going to shut you off almost immediately. So this came in with a referral. I put a couple of LOIs in previously and offers. So I think the combination of the referral and then just the constant feedback. They sent me one deal, I put an LOI in. They sent me another deal, I put an LOI in. So I think combination of the action and just constant communication.
That's great, and that's awesome. So you toured his other property. The other one didn't work out. You got beat out, and then you put an offer on this one here. Tell us a little bit about the entire process leading up to closing, and anything unusual there, or what happened to that point.
Yeah, so it's an older building, so it was built in 1930s. Well, two apartments. The 39 unit is in downtown Spartanburg, South Carolina. It's a 39 unit. It was built in the 30s. And then we had a 16 unit a couple miles away that was built in the 40s. So they're both older units, beautiful wood floors throughout. I mean, it was in very good condition, overall. It was just very dated, so we started looking, prior to putting the offer in, we were looking at the comps, and this is the only apartment in Spartanburg, downtown Spartanburg, that rents for less than $1,000 a month. And they were averaging about $780 a month on rents. So, through the due diligence process, we paid a lot of attention to, okay, it's a very old building. What could go wrong? So we dove through the financials, through the maintenance reports, and fortunately they had very good maintenance reports. And, one thing we found is they had, like $10,000 in plumbing repairs in the past year. So I started scratching my head, called the plumber, and, talked directly to the plumber who did everything. The roof was old, but, we had an inspector walk through with us. We had our property manager walk through with us. We had the maintenance person from the property management company walk through with us. So during the due diligence process, it was just many set of eyes, inspectors and contractors and maintenance personnel and property managers to kind of walk through it. I think the hardest part of the whole process was probably getting the loan. It's just a lot of documents that they asked for, a lot of information. So assembling all the information, getting that through, and going through the loan process was probably the biggest hurdle we have to overcome. And then at the end of the hurdle, so we ended up getting two Fannie Mae loans. We looked at different options of, should we do a portfolio loan on these two properties? That's what the previous owner had. Or should we just do two separate ones? And when we underwrote it in, May, the answer was two separate. We were going to get more proceeds for two separate. So we went forward with two separate Fannie Mae loans, which, two is not quite twice as hard as one, but it's definitely harder than one. But that ended up being the biggest hurdle and snag we had because, Fannie Mae is regulated by the federal government. They have certain caps on lending every year, and about 8 or 9 days before the contract was over, we had our closing date set up. We had money in the bank. We were ready to close. But I get a phone call from the broker, and she's like, "Hey, Brian, I got some bad news for you. Rates went from 3.9 to 5.1 in the last 3 days." I'm like, "Ouch, that sounds bad." And I knew what it meant, but, so my first question is, where are the proceeds right now? She's like, "Well, that's the thing. You just lost $600,000 in proceeds." And we went from being fully committed, having all the money in the bank, your renovation budget, everything, to, oh my gosh, are we going to be able to close in just that quick? So internally we circled the wagons and we said, "Hey, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix this?" So we came up with a game plan to get to closing, and obviously it worked because we closed on it. So we moved the needle a little bit. We decided, okay, with the extra $600,000 in reserves, that dilutes the investor pool, which dilutes returns. So we ran the analysis, and our projected investor return went from 15 to like 12. And we're like, I don't want to tell anybody that. So basically what we ended up doing to keep the deal alive is moving the needle on the investor returns. We had previously offered a 75% equity to the investors. We went to 90%. We just kind of played with the numbers, and 90% brought the investors back up to a 15% mark. Mm-hmm. So end of the day, we had two options. Option number one was to just, cut the deal and run. We didn't like that option. And option two was to, just give the investors a larger share of the pie and proceed. So, we took option two. It ended up working out. We closed on it, and we've since raised, quite a bit more money, and we're in a really good spot right now. So,
so that was a tough time to get that deal closed. Talk a little bit about how you guys set out to raise money.
I think for a lot of people, first deal is the same. You contact everybody, friends and family. So we basically advertised it to everybody that we knew, everybody in our network, friends and friends of friends to get it done. And it came in spurts. It was kind of interesting. We'd go a couple of weeks without nothing, and then we'd get, 4 investors at a time. In general, it was emailing everybody we know, calling everybody we know, telling everybody we know about it. And, when people expressed interest, would follow up with them. So that in a nutshell, it was basically personal networks on that one. And, we were fortunate enough to have, enough people in our personal network to be able to get it across the finish line.
There's also 4 of you that really, really helped, and everybody did their part. And, so I know that you and Todd were working with our mentors. What role did they play during this, if any?
Oh, they played a crucial role. I mean, Josh Eidingen's is my mentor, and we had several calls just on one prior to getting under contract. He was looking at him over my shoulder on everything. I sent him the analysis. He'd look it over and say, "Hey, did you think about that? Have you looked at this?" And sometimes I'd say yes. Sometimes I'd be like, "Yep, never thought of that one." So there was a lot of guidance that he gave us prior to putting the offer in. So when I put the offer in, I was very confident that we weren't overpaying, and I was confident it was going to be a good deal. And then during the process, it was actually Drew Whitson that suggested moving the needle on investor returns. So he was Todd's mentor, and we were all on a phone call together. I think Josh and Drew were both in the Zoom call with all of us, and we were just brainstorming ideas. And Drew just said, "Hey, look, why don't you play with the investor returns?" We had tried to pull a whole bunch of different levers to make things work. He's like, "Why don't you just change that a little bit?" So I had the deal analyzer in front of me, made some changes. I'm like, "Hey guys, that works. That actually works. If we move it to 90-10, we're back up to 15% investor return." So we made the decision that day to go 90-10, and we ended up calling every single one of the people who had committed with us and explaining to them what happened. And, at the time we were worried that people were going to drop, but we didn't drop a single investor after that one. And it was just like, "Hey, we had this problem, we had this snag, but what we're going to do is we're just going to give you a larger percent of the pie to keep your returns the same." And oh my gosh, I mean, the response was incredibly positive on that one. I was more worried about the naysayers on that one, but we didn't get a single naysayer. So.
It's a brilliant advice, and sometimes you need someone who's more experienced to put things in perspective. Because sometimes you would make an offer or go into contract with a deal that you shouldn't have, or you would have put a bullet in something you shouldn't have, right? So this is a perfect example of someone with more experience goes, "Hey, why don't you try that?" And the other lesson here is you got to take care of your investors first. And yes, that means you're paying yourself less, but especially when it's your first deal, we talk a lot about this. The value of the first deal far outweighs any kind of money that you get from that deal. And even if you crush it or you make $0, like it doesn't matter what you're getting monetarily, the value of that first deal is far outweighs any kind of monetary value they're getting from that. And there's an example of that. So you guys did a good job with that. Now, speaking of the value of the first deal, you said that you got the second deal under contract before you closed this one. How did this come about? Talk about that.
Okay, so when I went on that first South Carolina trip in March, in addition to touring 3 properties, I lined up as many meetings with brokers that I could. And
smart.
A lot of brokers just wouldn't do it. So there's one guy I met, I offered to buy him lunch or coffee or something. He's like, yeah, just come over to the office, and, walking in the meeting, he's like, I'll give you 15 minutes. And 15 minutes on the dot, he's like, all right, thanks. And during the conversation, we had a good conversation, but he said, hey, I'll send you some things. And he never sent me anything, it just never sent me anything. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, all right, I must have said something in there that to not get his confidence. Okay. He was probably not confident enough in me to want to waste time, and anyway, probably August, September timeframe when we were getting to, it was August. We were getting close to closing on the Spartanburg deal. We started talking together that, among the Four Oaks partners, hey, we need the next deal. So let's start reaching out to all the brokers that we've met. So I emailed him and I said, hey, we met in March, and I probably put something in the email that may have been a little snippy, like, you probably didn't respond to me because of X, Y, or Z, whatever. But, since we last talked, we've raised, $1.5 million. We're, 2 weeks from closing on a 55 unit deal. And lo and behold, he responds immediately. So he sent us, we told him what our criteria was. And he's like, hey, right now I've got nothing in your range, but I do have this. And it was a 32 unit that was listed for 800,000, and I thought, we really want to go bigger, but I called Eric and I said, hey, Eric, why don't you go over and meet this broker, tour the property just so we can get a relationship with the broker. I didn't think the property was worth pursuing. But we ended up getting it under contract for $22,000 per unit in a market where stuff like that is selling at about 45 to 50. Wow. And it wasn't in horrible condition. The owner, it's not a requirement in South Carolina for the owner to supply stove and fridges. So the owner didn't supply stoves and fridges. And looking through the entire apartment complex, there was nothing wrong with it. It wasn't in great condition. It's definitely C-class. But it was about, 30% or 60% occupancy rate. And largely because there wasn't a stove, there wasn't a fridge. So a tenant would have to pay a security deposit, first month's rent, buy a stove and buy a fridge to live there. And so anyway, we realized it was a diamond in a rough. And it was at a price that we couldn't beat. So, we put an offer in on that one too, and ended up getting it. So, that's the one we closed on last week. And we have about a $400,000 renovation budget. We've already got an appraisal. The after repair value is more than double what we paid for it. And, we're probably going to make a pretty penny on that one.
Yeah, it's amazing. I don't want to gloss over the fact that you met this broker in person. He kind of brushed you off. Yeah. And then as soon as you learned that you closed on this deal, he's like chasing you.
Yeah. It's just, and that's not the first time it happened. There were several brokers, we did the same thing with several brokers, and now when we reach out to them and instead of wannabe syndicators, we have something under our belt, and you've preached the law of the first deal many times. I didn't really understand the power of it until all of a sudden, all these other brokers that brushed me off are now just taking me seriously, and they're inviting us out, to their place, and inviting us out to lunch sometimes, so it's just one of those things that, once you get over that first hurdle, the second one is so much easier. The time frame comes down and it's just easier to break through that stone wall that a lot of brokers put up.
It's funny you say that. I do talk about the law of the first deal a long time, and people kind of go, but you don't really understand it until you witness it firsthand. It is like light switch went on.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's exactly that. And the second one that we have under contract now, so we've got an 80 unit under contract. I don't remember exactly when that came under contract, but it was right around the time we closed on the Spartanburg deal that we had that one under contract, so we had analyzed several, we had floated a couple of offers, and ended up getting that one under contract too. So yeah, I mean, once you have a little bit of experience and a track record, it's a lot easier to get the broker's attention. It's a lot easier to be able to get that deal feed to you. So you have, a lot more things to analyze and a higher probability of another deal.
Well, so not only have you done your first deal in the first 12 months, I want to emphasize that it's very common that people who are really serious and committed, they educate themselves. Maybe they sign up for Mentor, maybe not, and they hustle. It's very common that they can do their first deal in the first 12 months, like you guys did. But you guys will have done 3 deals in, I don't know what, 14, 15 months, certainly within 18 months.
Yeah, 14 to 15. Yes.
That's staggering. I mean, isn't that weird that you're sitting here looking back 24 months ago that you had like 3 deals on your belt? Like, doesn't that blow your mind?
24 months ago, yes, that would have been staggering. 12 months ago is where I sat back and said, what's possible?
Yeah.
Now that I know, and I'd gone through, all the videos on in the ultimate apartment guide course. I had done millions and millions of podcasts. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but hundreds of podcast hours, just listening and prepping. But, once I realized what was possible, 12 months ago is when I made the goal. It was actually 13. So November last year, I made the goal to do 2 deals in 2019 because I caught the vision. Yeah, 24 months ago, if you had told me that, I would have told you, yeah, it's crazy. That's crazy talk. So, but yeah, that's, a lot of it is the mentor. A lot of people talk about mentors. Having that mentor is crucial. And having the network of other professionals is crucial. Wherever you go to get it, that network is crucial. Every time I had questions, I could go to my mentor, or I could go to any number of guys, within the network and ask them questions. And I still do.
Yeah, the support is critical, especially because every deal is going to be a little different. It'll be a little different twists and turns. So having someone to lean on for support in that way is critical. Now, one of the things I'm noticing is that there's 4 of you guys, and one of the challenges always is how do you split up the work? Now, if it's normally one, or if it's two people, it's one thing. How are you guys splitting up the roles and responsibilities in the company?
It's very fluid. It's a work in progress. So Eric is our acquisitions guy. So he's the one that's going out and finding all the new deals, getting them under contract. And then I'm the asset manager, but because I'm the asset manager, I'm also helping on closing. I want to be part of that due diligence, so I know what I'm going to be managing once we close. So from beginning to complete asset management, that's basically Eric and I are doing the bulk of the work on that. Todd's basic responsibility is raising money. So he's put a lot of effort into building networks, building platforms, and he just signed up for the platform building course with you last week. That, but nobody else does yet. But so that's his main job. And then Brian Mallon does everything else. He does our deal packets. He does, the bank stuff, the portal, the website. He's basically doing everything else that, I don't have time or the skill set to actually do. So, but as we go through, we're always, we look at who's got the most load, and then we kind of redistribute things to kind of make it even based on how much time we all have.
So you're making it work, and you're giving everyone precise things to do, which is very important in partnership. So yes, it's a small company, so you're expected to do a lot of different things. But if you say you are accountable for acquisitions, you're accountable for asset management, you're accountable for raising money, and you're accountable for basically support, and that keeps everything very clean. right? And
Yes.
one of the things I find is when it's not clean, when, oh, we're both involved in acquisitions and money raising, what happens is, and this is my observation, is there's conflict about, oh, you're not pulling your weight.
Yeah.
You're not pulling your weight. Versus if you're responsible for asset management and you're not doing a good job, everyone, first of all, can tell. And since you're accountable up front, they can say, hey, Brian, they have a conversation around that. And it's a much easier conversation than when you're sharing asset management with someone else. Well, is it my fault or his fault? Or now the finger pointing. So I think that was my concern early on, is that there's too many cooks in the kitchen, but you guys have really addressed that very nicely. On the other hand, it presents another challenge, which is you guys are going to have to scale your business because obviously if you're cutting everything in, well, let's say 4, then it's going to take a lot longer. What is your scaling plan?
So our scaling plan, we're basically constrained by how much money we can raise. I'd do a $20 million deal tomorrow if I could raise for it. But right now our biggest focus is getting that money generating part of the business up and running. So as far as scaling, our goal for 2020 is going to be 500 units. We want to do 4 deals, and we're looking to do 100 plus units on every deal. So, we've got that number, but we realize that, biggest thing that's holding us up is how much money we can raise. So, we've all created avatars, who's the type of person that, I can appeal to the best and that I'm most likely to be able to raise money from. And, Todd's main job is raising money, but we all take part. We're all working at that. So, our scale plan, we're a lot more active on social media than we were in the past. We're starting to post, videos on YouTube. We haven't, published that yet, but eventually we're going to publish it. And we're talking about a podcast as well. So, basically we need to bring more people into the fold. We're going to exhaust our friends and family, really soon on money raising. But we're trying to bring as many people in the fold as possible. We're also attending meetups. We're planning to start meetups. In the DC area, there's a lot of multifamily meetups, but I'm in Gaithersburg. And the closest multifamily meetup to where I'm at, there's one over by Baltimore that's really good, and there's one down by where you live that's really good. There's nothing close. So, I'm going to start one in Rockville with somebody that I met in this area. And, Todd and Eric are talking about starting meetups in the Carolinas just to bring more people in the fold. So, the focus on bringing money in is just meet as many people as we can. Put ourselves in a position where, people can see what we're doing. And, once they see what we're doing and we can show credibility, hopefully we'll get a lot of investors with that one.
Now, you mentioned this platform builder course. This is not a public course. If you're watching, listen to this stuff. This is something that we're developing right now. And Brian is one of several working with us on that, but it's really a workshop to help people who have raised some money to scale the business. And really, realistically, we think with an existing platform, we can 10x whatever you're raising right now, whatever you're making right now. So if you're raising whatever 500,000, then with this platform within 18 months, you're going to be raising 5 million. And it's because you're attracting the right kind of investor and you're cultivating a relationship with them and then leading them to basically invest with you, creating a substantive pre-existing relationship so that you can actually present them with live deals. And Brian has recognized that, and he just mentioned here in the podcast that this is their main issue is scale, right? Because once you've raised $500,000, $700,000, the scaling that to 7 million, the way that you've done it in the past, which is word of mouth, one-on-one meetings, is really not possible. Well, it certainly is. Shout out to Brian Burke. He's done it for the last 25 years, but it took him 25 years. We want to do it a little faster than that. So we're going to be basically building platforms, and we'll be launching this later in probably Q2 of 2020 because the need is very big to build platforms in the way we just talked about. So I'm just really impressed with you guys. And when we had a conversation, you mentioned earlier, you're really doing a 6 or 10 unit. Back when you started off, whatever, 14, 15 months ago, and now you guys are like, we're going to do 500 units in 2020.
Yeah.
Like the mindset shift that you've undergone by educating yourself, but also by taking action and getting into your first deal, it just blows my mind.
Yeah. You know, I was surprised. I'm not going to say surprised, but it went a lot faster than I had anticipated. And, it was just getting around people who had done it before, and throw a shout out to Daniel Woodford, and Christine Jefferson. They're the ones that I talked to that, made my mind expand, it's just one of those, I sat down with lunch with Christine one day and talked to Daniel over the phone a couple of times. And, they're really the ones that, after talking with them, I'm just like, why am I doing a 6, 8, 12 type stuff?
Yeah.
I can go big. So yeah, that was really it. I think the mindset shift was really the catalyst. And once I made that mindset shift, I just had the same attitude that I approach a lot of other things with, there's no failure is not an option. And the other part of my mindset that I think really helped out is, I've got 18 and a half years in the Marine Corps, and I'm going to retire as soon as I hit my 20-year mark. As soon as I'm eligible to retire, that's it. So I have a very finite amount of time to make this work. So I also made the decision that, I'm going to make this work, number one. And number two, by the time I retire in, summer of 2021, I'm going to be making as much money in real estate as I am in my day job so I can keep supporting the family. And in my mind, everybody's talking to me about, well, are you going to, there's a lot of people that get out of the, retire from the Marine Corps and then work for defense contractors or other government agencies, and in my mind, I've just completely shut that option off. I'm not going to do that. Just to keep, it's like you burn the ships when you get to a new land, so there's no going back. And that's kind of the other mental shift that I made is, I'm going to make this work. This is going to be my next career, and there's no other option.
I love that. You're committed to the outcome. There's no other option for whatever it takes, how long it takes. Share with us, Brian, the blueprint, okay? Someone sitting there where you were 24 months ago, scratching your head about real estate investing. What's your advice to them?
Put them through basically what I did. I did a lot of reading on different methods. Different people are better at different things. Some people are really good at fix and flips. Some people are really good at, lease options, subject tos, whatever, but there's a lot of ways to make money. So the first thing I would say is, just do research on different ways to do it, and then pick one and get really good at it. I ended up, multifamily resonated with me, and I ended up doing everything I could to learn more. I started with podcasts, and then went into, an online learning program, education program, and then into coaching. You don't have to do all that, but what you need to do is learn the game and get really good at it. And then really from there, it's just take action, don't stop. And that's really the two key pieces is once you learn something, put it in action. And that's largely what I did through the whole process is, okay, I need to learn how to, analyze a deal. And so I'd analyze a deal. Okay, I've analyzed deals. Now I need to know how to make an offer. A lot of times I didn't worry about what was 6 months down the road. I focused on, okay, I just learned how to do this. I'm going to put it in action. Okay, put it in action. Okay, now what's the next step? And, fortunately I had a mentor. So I knew that I'd be able to figure out the next step quickly. I had a network, so I knew I'd be able to get the next step quickly. So, once you get educated, you need to find people that can support you. That's largely it. Pick a plan, stick to it, and find people that can help.
Yeah, I love that. It's been great, Brian. I thank you for coming on the show and inspiring us. I think that everyone's trying to figure out how do I get myself in that first deal, and you've done it, and you've done it probably faster than maybe you thought it was possible. And the truth is, you're not the only one doing it from scratch. And so I hope that everyone watching, listening this is inspired by Brian today. Hey, Brian, how can people connect with you?
Our website's fouroakscapital.com. And my email address is just Brian Briscoe, no punctuation, at fouroakscapital.com, all spelled out.
Awesome. Hey, Brian, thanks for being on the show.
All right. Hey, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate you.
So I love Brian's last, 5 tips he had at the end, right? Because in his mind, it's like, oh, there's a blueprint. And, he just kind of followed what we taught him to do. But I love how he distilled it down. He says, first thing is learn. You got to learn the ropes. You got to learn how to analyze deals, how to speak the language. Okay, so you got to learn. What else did he say? He goes, take action, don't stop. This is really a consistent theme with anyone who's successful and who is not successful. Okay, this is that they're taking action and they're not stopping. It's consistency. And consistency is a key trait that I found of people who are successful, and people who are consistent are committed to the outcome regardless of the timeline, and that's really, really important. The third thing you said is just in order to keep taking action consistently, don't think 9 steps ahead. Okay, just kind of do the next thing. I always say do the next 3 things, because everybody knows the next 3 things they should be doing. Just do those. Don't think about the 9th step or the 76th step. Okay, you're just going to overwhelm yourself. So don't do that. Just do the next 3 things. The 4th thing he said is surround yourself with a support network. And there's really 2 kinds of support network that you need one way or another. You need a network of peers, okay, a support of peers. These are people who are at your level and they want to do what you want to do, right? So, you're commiserating, you're supporting each other, maybe you're holding yourself accountable. That's the first group of people. And certainly if you're a mentor, we have one-on-one coaching, but also we have group coaching, and they also participate in this Steelmaker Mastermind we talked about on the show. And so that connects you with essentially your peers. The other person you need someone who is the experienced person, this mentor, this advisor. And if you can find someone, in networking, that's great, right? Get them to take a lunch with you, phone calls whenever you need. I think that's really great. These are people who have done what you have done, or done what you want to do. In this case, you're looking for someone who is obviously an active multifamily syndicator, who has raised money before, can find deals, and in our case, for our students, also has quit their job. So all of our mentors, our coaches, have done exactly that. They're all full-time. They've all quit their job, because the transition from a W-2 job to going on your own is a scary one, right? And so you're not only getting mentorship from the actual act of doing a deal, but the actual transition into full-time investing is kind of scary as well. So you need to have that kind of support. Now, if you have, and then the 5th thing you said is the network, and we talked a lot about that on the show. The network is so important, and you can't do this alone. It's just, you could, and we have people who have done it alone. They just tend to take longer and they do smaller deals, and partly because of that, they kind of fizzle out at the end, right? Because they don't have that momentum going. This is definitely not a lone wolf. It's a team sport for sure. So get it out of your mind that you're all alone. You got to get out there. You got to mingle with people. You got to meet people. You got to meet partners. You got to build advisors. You got to get out there, because like Brian said, it's absolute magic. If you're speaking to someone more experienced and they're like, Brian, don't do a 6 unit. That's dumb. Don't do that. You can easily do a 50 plus unit. Easily. It's easy. You can do it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can? It goes, oh yeah, my gosh. People do it all the time. And this is exactly true. People do it all the time. It could be their first deal. It doesn't matter. Don't go with 6. And it really instills a belief in you. And so definitely go out and build yourself a network and a team. Now, if you have those 2 things, of support and the network, okay, what happens is you get an unbelievable amount of confidence. Now, confidence is super important for several reasons. Number one is it affects your ability to take action, right? Because if you're not confident, you might not take action. So it's going to affect your ability to analyze deals. Oh, I'm not so sure if I'm doing this right. Affect your ability to make offers. Oh, I don't know if it's going to be good enough. So confidence affects everything. It affects how people react to you, especially brokers. You call up a broker and you appear tentative, maybe using the wrong words, and the broker will go, oh, that's great, Michael. Hey, I got an idea. Why don't you send me your proof of funds and I'll maybe send you a deal. That's what they'll say, because you didn't sound confident. And so confidence is absolutely critical, and you get that by educating yourself and by practicing and by having support and a network in place. Kind of the way Brian described it, it's absolutely key. The good news is when you have that, there's several good news. Number one is it doesn't take a long time. We talked about him doing this first deal in 10 months. Okay, so it takes like 60 to 90 days to build a team and build your confidence, your knowledge. It doesn't take a long time. And also what happens is that your comfort zone expands especially when you're working with more experienced people, and especially once you do your first deal, your comfort zone explodes. But it accelerates quite a bit by being around experienced people who kind of shake their head going, yeah, don't do the small deal, just do the big deal. Oh yeah? Oh, you can do it. And it expands your comfort zone. And that's a major, major benefit of working with more experienced people. So therefore, the good news is it doesn't take a long time to develop a support group or develop a network, especially if you have a mentor. And if you're looking for a mentor, if you think that's right for you, then you might be interested in our mentoring program. We talked a lot about. You can find out about at themichaelblanc.com/mentor, and you can find out and schedule a strategy session for us with us. And the thing is, though, here's the thing: I'm looking for the right kind of person, and I am looking for someone who's coachable, and I'm looking for someone who takes action, doesn't stop, and who's willing to invest with them and sees the value in having a mentor, kind of like Brian. If you're one of those people, then definitely schedule a conversation with us. That's themichaelblanc.com/mentor. We've done this now, and our track record is so good that we can actually guarantee results. So in fact, we will guarantee that you'll do your first deal in the first 12 months. It's a 12-month program. If for some reason it takes longer, we'll work with you for as long as it takes. And it's because we know that once we have the right person, then the results are inevitable. Okay, they're not a question mark, they're inevitable. So if that really excites you, then schedule out a call with us at themichaelblanc.com/mentor. Again, keep this in mind. Think joint venturing, partnering. Okay, it really accelerates the process considerably. So hopefully you found that inspiring. You guys have a great rest of the day, great rest of the week, and I'll catch you on the next episode.